It has been said, and very often by my professors, that music is a metaphor for life. And as such, it really is essential, not only for me, but all of humankind. If you think for a moment of life without companionship, it's companionship that really adds a richness to one's life, and music is always there in the worst moments and also in the most joyous moments. Or if you think of life without imagination, something would be terribly missing. And music is the one key that unlocks the imagination so that people can imagine a world in which they want to live in, free from the constraints of the material world that they're surrounded. So for me, music is truly a metaphor for life. If you think about any great accomplishments, and not only in the arts, paintings, sculptures, music, but also in great business ventures, great creations, it is said that the sum is always greater than the total of its parts. Of course, the parts have to have integrity, and that's where musical instruments come into play. But if you're speaking about orchestra music, when each one of the instruments has integrity, they form a sum that simply is greater than each individual instrument. And when the music is performed very well, as a listener, you don't even think to analyze what instrument is giving what. It creates something that is simply not possible to have unless it's collective. I think that's what makes orchestral music so very special, and great instruments in particular. These different instruments come together, and in a way it's kind of like a simile for democracy. Different traits, different backgrounds, different characteristics, different personalities come together in a voluntary way to create something that can't be done by an individual. The word quality is simply overused in our contemporary times today. It's meant to really address a number of issues. But let's take for a moment simply technical quality. Technical quality, it would be unfair to compare something with inferior quality to superior quality. And that would be the case certainly with musical instruments. Completely apart from music, it would be unreasonable to expect a Fiat, for example, to compete well in an automobile race with a Ferrari. The quality and the technical abilities are just simply so far different that it's not interesting to even contemplate. On the other side, quality can have to do with humanism, with aesthetics. And what a great instrument allows a musician or an artist to do is to fully express themselves at a full potential. Emotions, spiritual aspects, intellectual ideas. I would even say physically, some instruments are so strong that they allow one to produce tones that you might not ordinarily have a chance to produce. That's why it's so important to have great instruments as a part of your orchestra, from the technical side, yes, but especially from the humanistic side. As I've just mentioned, superior instruments like the instruments that you just mentioned, they allow an artist, even I would say any musician, because I remember as a young child the difference on playing between the piano that we had at home and then at my professor's home, a concert grand piano. Even I, as a young student, 4 years old, 5 years old, could immediately feel the difference of the freedom that a great instrument allows an artist to really fully express themselves. I think that ability to express, and it's very much tied to the freedom to realize the imagination. When any human being is dreaming of something extraordinary, it is only frustrating to be limited by the materials that you have around. So that's why I would say it's so important for any artist, any musician, to be able to have the proper equipment, meaning an instrument, that will not somehow limit their ability to express themselves at the full potential. It's often been said that instruments, and violins in particular, are like a voice. And if you think of the human voice, it doesn't stay the same as one ages. Timbre changes, richness changes, and perhaps not always in the most positive way, but think for a moment of syntax, semantics, the command of vocabulary. In the best of cases, as we age, our vocabulary grows, and with that, our ability to express ourselves. This is particularly apparent, for example, if you see great theater performers. When that ability of an enlarged vocabulary and a deeper semantics come into play, it emphasizes a richness of the vocal quality itself, and you're moved. The short way of saying that is that with age, certain qualities come that are simply not there at a very, very young age. And that's the case with great instruments. They sound with a certain character, personality, richness, and depth that you cannot have without a certain age. And I think that in this case, with these instruments, that's what we're speaking about. One of my great musical friends, but also personal friend, is Mr. Joseph Kroner. He's quite an exceptional figure because not only is he a brilliant violinist and a performer, professional musician, but he also is very much involved in contemporary business world today. And his particular area of specialties, naturally, is in helping find homes for the great instruments of the world. And it was through Mr. Kroner that I first heard of this extraordinary firm. One of my favorite words in German is sprachlos. I was so surprised. Of course, that goes beyond being overjoyed. I was really deeply surprised that such a successful and rapid-moving firm would have the vision and the foresight to think about great instruments as a source of almost guaranteed investment. It's something that all of us musicians, we know this intimately, especially those of us that can barely afford to purchase our instruments. We know that if we don't purchase them now, we will never be able to afford them. I think it speaks very, very well for the visionary perspectives that this company has. If someone is able to see and feel the future, of course, is a great advantage for success. Music cannot be made without partnerships, at least in the way that we know it. Even a solo pianist cannot really make music without a partnership. At its most basic level, a performance needs at least 3 people. It needs a composer to write the music. It needs an interpreter, say for example a concert pianist, and it also needs an audience. The dialogue between these 3, the composer, the interpreter, and the audience, is a partnership, and it's through this partnership that music lives. So on a purely philosophical level, partnerships are critical. They are really essential. On a deeper level, I would say that throughout musical history, we've seen partnerships be an integral part of music success, specifically here in Hamburg, for example. If you think about the Hamburg Opera, the oldest opera in the world, formed in the late 1600s. It was not formed by aristocracy, it was not formed by the monarchy, not formed by emperors or empresses. It was formed by the need and the desire from the Gesellschaft here in Hamburg, the successful, really Gesellschaft, the Bürger from Hamburg that decided collectively to join in partnership and form this great opera company. If you think of Carnegie Hall, it wouldn't exist without Mr. Carnegie. If you think of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, the great pavilion in Los Angeles, of course it wouldn't exist without Mrs. Chandler. History of music goes even deeper. If you think of the great patrons of the Romantic era, Chopin, Berlioz, Beethoven, Mozart, they are all dedicated to those partners that help them realize their works of art. It's a part of this societal exchange that music so effectively represents. It's part of making music. So yes, I would say that not only is important, it's essential. Great pleasure. Thank you so much.